Pay close attention to this video. You see a Russian drone flying and then, out of nowhere, it falls. No explosion, no noise, no sign at all of what happened. When this video leaked in March of 2026, no one could explain what had brought down this drone. There's no missile, no other drone, absolutely nothing visible. And that's exactly where things get interesting, because what made this drone crash didn't come from the present. It came from the future. And Ukraine has just proven that this future has already arrived. In this video, I'll show you what this weapon is and why Russia has plenty of reasons to be concerned about it. And most importantly, I'll show you why it solves one of the biggest problems of modern warfare. On February 10th, 2026, the journalist Simon Schuster from the American magazine The Atlantic was taken to an empty field in the interior of Ukraine. It was cold, the sky was gray, a pickup truck was parked in the middle of nowhere, and on top of it, a device that looked, in his own words, like an amateur telescope with two cameras attached to the sides. A drone was launched. It went up and flew a few hundred meters away. And then the operator gave the order to fire. No sound, no beam of light, no explosion, absolutely nothing visible happened, and the drone simply started burning in the air, as if it had been struck by an invisible lightning bolt and fell to the ground in flames. What you just saw is a system called Sunray in action, and the whole thing fits in the trunk of an ordinary car. It can be mounted on any vehicle in just a few minutes. The cameras on the sides automatically identify and track the target. The operator confirms and fires. In seconds, the drone is taken down. And the most impressive thing is the way it works. Look, the laser concentrates enormous heat on a tiny spot on the drone. This heat destroys the internal parts or burns the structure of the device. It loses control and crashes. No pieces flying through the air. No risk of explosion on the ground, and no trace left showing where the shot came from. And now comes the detail that makes Sunray different from anything else on the battlefield today. Russia started using more and more a specific type of drone that was practically impossible to shoot down with any existing system. The so-called fiber optic drones. These drones don't use radio signals, they don't use GPS. They are controlled by an extremely thin physical cable that connects the operator to the drone. There's no signal to jam because there isn't any signal at all. Any equipment that tries to jam transmissions is completely useless against them. The only solution to take them down is a physical one. Cutting the cable, and that's where Sunray comes in. The combat footage released in March of 2026 shows exactly that. The weapon being used to burn and cut the fiber optic cable that connected a Russian drone to its operator. Without the cable, the drone instantly loses control, and it falls. No explosion, no noise. The Russian pilot somewhere on the other side suddenly has no control over anything anymore. And he probably doesn't even understand what happened. Think about that for a second. From the Russian point of view, your drone just stops responding. There was no explosion, no sign of an attack. There's no way to know where it came from, nor how to defend yourself. For those operating these drones on the other side, it's like fighting against something invisible, and that's exactly what makes Sunray scary. Not just what it does, but what he represents. A threat that Russia still has no answer for. The name behind Sunray is Pavlo Yelizarov. And the story of this man says everything about how Ukraine manages to do in 2 years what other countries can't do in decades. Yelizarov wasn't a military man. He was a businessman. He was a television producer. One of the most popular political shows in the country was produced in his studio. In February 2022, when Russia invaded, he went to a recruitment center, picked up a rifle, and started from scratch. With his own money, he started to assemble and equip his combat group. He turned the old television studio into a makeshift military drone factory. He convinced friends to join. The work was so serious that the American government noticed and started sending equipment and support. The group grew beyond any expectations. The team he created was responsible for destroying, according to Ukrainian sources, more than $12 billion in Russian military equipment. 1 in every 5 Russian tanks destroyed in the war was taken out by his group's actions. But in a single night, Russian drones set his main factory on fire. Everything that had been built. Almost $35 million in equipment. It turned to ashes. So he started over. In January 2026, President Zelensky appointed him as the deputy commander of the Ukrainian Air Force with a specific mission to create an anti-drone shield that would cover the entire country. And Yelizarov initially refused. He considered the deadline impossible. The Minister of Defense convinced him with a blunt statement. You can stay in the stands watching the game and criticizing the players on the field, or you can get on the field and show what you can do. He went in, and it was this same Yelizarov who, when asked why Ukraine managed to do in 2 years what much richer countries couldn't do in decades, said, "Many American companies are driven by money. For them, it's just a job." We have another factor at play. The need to survive. Think carefully about that sentence. Because what's behind it isn't just a military issue. There are Ukrainian cities that spent the entire winter without electricity, without heating, with their power infrastructure destroyed by drones. There are civilians who wake up in the middle of the night to warning sirens. There are people who have lived for years knowing that a cheap drone can appear at any moment. The Sunray is not just a technological response, it's the response of a country that needs to protect its people with what it has and doesn't have time to wait. When you add this context to the numbers, what Ukraine did becomes even harder to believe. Take, for example, the US Navy's main laser system. It was developed by the company Lockheed Martin, with investments that, in total, over the years exceeded $350 million. The result was a single system installed on a single warship. And in March of 2026, the United States Army announced that it was ending its most advanced laser program. It was too expensive and too complex. The Dragonfire, another laser system from the United Kingdom, received more than £416 million in investment over the years. It's an impressive system. Each shot costs the equivalent of running a household heater for an hour, about 10 pounds. But it will only actually reach Royal Navy ships in 2027. The Ukrainian Sunray cost a few $1,000,000 to develop. It fits in the trunk of a car. It already exists and has been demonstrated. It has already appeared in real combat. And here's a detail that will completely change the way you're seeing this story. And it's something that almost no one is saying outright. Look, the situation became so critical for Russia that, according to unofficial reports, it had to resort to Chinese laser technology to try to at least keep up with what Ukraine is developing on its own, with its own engineers, with its own resources. That says a lot about who's ahead in this race. And it's not just in this direct competition. The whole world is quietly rearming itself with this kind of technology. Israel is the clearest example. After using early versions of its laser system in combat against Hezbollah drones, as early as October 2024, the country put the Iron Beam, its full 100,000-watt system, into official service in December 2025.
שומעים את האזעקות של הקריות? יואו! אבא שם שצילמת.
The United Kingdom signed a £316 million contract to install the Dragonfire on its warships. Australia has already sold its laser system to the Netherlands and South Korea. The race has clearly already begun. And in this race, Ukraine is developing its own technology from scratch, while others still depend on buying from abroad. But what Ukraine really wants goes far beyond winning this race. Zelensky has a deadline. He wants a complete shield up and running by the summer of 2026. The plan is simple in theory: lasers to shoot down the closest and cheapest threats, interceptor drones for the mid-range threats. And Western missiles like the Patriot are reserved only for the most difficult and dangerous attacks, the ones that nothing else can stop. Each type of threat is handled with the right tool. No expensive resource is spent on something that a laser can solve for almost nothing. The timeline is aggressive. But Ukraine has already shown several times that it can do in months what other countries take years to do. Few people are discussing another part of this story. In February 2026, for the first time since the beginning of the Russian invasion, Ukraine began selling weapons to other countries. The country, which for years received weapons from all over the world, is now becoming a supplier. In March 2026, Zelensky personally went to the Middle East and signed defense partnership agreements with Saudi Arabia and Qatar, with ongoing talks with the United Arab Emirates. According to Ukrainian sources, several countries have already requested help to deal with Iranian-made drones. As you can see, the Ukrainian battlefield has become the world's largest laboratory for drone defense. And now Ukraine is starting to export what it has learned in this laboratory. To give you an idea, Sunray already identifies and tracks targets automatically with the help of artificial intelligence. The next step, already in development, is for the weapon to decide on its own when to fire, without needing a human operator to confirm each shot. When that happens, the reaction speed will be something that's hard to imagine today. Remember the math we discussed earlier? Cheap to attack, expensive to defend. This logic has dominated this war since the first drone. With the Sunray, for the first time, this equation is being reversed. And specifically with the type of drone that Russia bet would be impossible to stop. Truth be told, Russia still doesn't have a good answer for that. And until it does, Ukraine has a real concrete advantage that's already proving itself on the battlefield. It's the first time that a weapon that fires light, developed during wartime with very little money by a team whose names are kept secret, actually works in real combat. In the 1980s, American President Ronald Reagan dreamed of this, a laser-based defense, and spent billions of dollars without succeeding. Major military powers spent decades trying to build something similar. And it was Ukraine in an empty field in the winter of 2026 on the back of a pickup truck that showed it worked. Not because they had more money, not because they had more time, but simply because they had no other choice. And now I want to ask you something. Do you agree that Ukraine is ahead of Russia in the drone war? Leave your opinion in the comments. If you got something out of this video, share it with someone who follows this conflict. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now is the time. See you next time.